Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at some of the makeup I have tried really hard to love, or in some cases just completely forgot about. So it looks like talc-free love is hard to find. Watch on! What started this whole process was I was quite keen to kind of make some space in my makeup drawers for newness that comes, once the new year sort of, comes in. And so that sort of got me looking at what I had not used and why. And actually, I suppose this video isn't a decluttering video. If you're here for sort of mountains of clutter that I'm going to sort through dramatically, I'm afraid this isn't the video for you, because I did my major decluttering a year and a half ago. So everything that I've got here has pretty much been bought in the last 18 months. And I suppose the stuff I'm going to focus on is mostly items that I've bought since starting my channel. So since we've basically been together looking at new items, or maybe re-releases, or whatever that might be. And it is interesting, isn't it? Because in a way it's ended up being a bit of an examination of how I feel and how influenced I suppose I've been, maybe either from FOMO or certain trends. Yeah, juicy, shiny, glossy blushes, that kind of stuff that I think in the end I'm not the target market for, but I really fell for it. Oh yes, I really fell for it. I really thought I was going to be that person, and I'm not that person. I think basically I'm not cool and trendy. I never have been cool and trendy, and I'm certainly not now. And spoiler alert, I don't think that's in the 2026 forecast either. I don't want to say I'm set in my ways, but maybe I am. Maybe I'm turning into one of those people. When I was on counter, every so often I'd get a lady coming up to the counter saying, have you got, I don't know, Peach Dream lipstick? And I would say, oh no, it was discontinued. And they would say, I've worn that for 25 years. Why do you always discontinue everything that I absolutely love? And now I realise, you know what? You've just got to keep changing. Of course you do. That's for me, it's like part of staying kind of engaged with the real world. But maybe I'm more set in my ways. Maybe the powder blush is a metaphor for my life, and really I need to be embracing tinted petroleum jelly, because that's kind of what I feel the blush situation for me was earlier in the year. Let's take a look. The thing about luxury beauty, it seems to me, is there's a fine line, isn't there, between the fantasy that we're sold and the user experience. And hopefully when it all works really well, I'm an absolute willing victim, probably more than anybody, or as much as anybody, in that I want to enjoy the hype and immerse myself in all the social media marketing and so on, and just end up kind of drinking it all in like a parched man crawling across the Mojave Desert. But there are two, in my opinion, notable exceptions this year where the product just did not live up to the hype and the social media kind of expectation. And in the end, I just amazingly didn't reach for them. The first is Pat McGrath's Petalmorphosis, which I was really excited about. I am not a huge Pat McGrath lover. I'm neither a collector of the Motherships. I've got a couple of quads that I enjoy. When the Christmas release, this one came out, whenever it was, last month, I'm really enjoying this, for example. But as I said, I'm not a Pat McGrath. I'm not a Pat McGrath Labs kind of aficionado. And I suppose that's partly why when Petalmorphosis came out and I was pretty much instantly underwhelmed, I basically assumed I'm not getting it because I'm just not appreciating what there is to appreciate in these. Time has gone on. Now I should tell you, I find this packaging so mouth-watering. I mean, just everything about it is just divine. I love the way she does this artwork with all the Motherships. I'm a total sucker. Of course you keep these, but it just adds everything possible. But I think in a way it made my disappointment more acute. I really do. So as you can probably see from my palette, it's hardly been used. I mean, I had another little play with it this afternoon in anticipation of this, just to remind myself Why is it I don't reach for it? And actually, there are some lovely shades which are kind of right up my street. You know, I like a bright metallic. I sort of appreciate it, and I enjoy a duochrome and all of that as much as I do a beautiful matte. And actually, that's a case in point, because in here there's Lunar Nectar, which is this shade here, which has got sort of sparkles built in. And at the time of my review, I did not understand the formula. I didn't. And one or more of you, in fact, pointed out to me that actually it's not just that you kind of smudge it on or brush it or, you know, sort of blend it with your finger. If you just use the brush, then you get the sparkles. And I kind of did it again on my hand to remind myself, but actually the sparkles are pretty insipid. It's just not neither one nor the other. It just kind of looks like a, yeah, just more, on me anyway, a more insipid matte rather than just a straightforward matte, as you can see here. So I don't know. I mean, at the time, lots of people who are kind of very familiar with the brand said, well, was Pat McGrath's kind of eye off the ball, as it were, because of her collaboration with Louis Vuitton? But I've kind of thought about that, and I think it's a bit like Hollywood actors. I don't think it has to be like that. So, you know, Keanu Reeves filming the John Wick movies kind of famously back to back. They were so demanding, weren't they? And he kind of filmed them back to back and managed to hold, you know, the script for one in his head and then immediately go on to the script for the next in his head. Or, you know, Lord of the Rings, they filmed all three, or how many films are there? I'm not a fan of the Lord of the Rings movies. I was, you know, forced to watch them by my children, but it's not my thing. But anyway, they were 3 movies, weren't they? And they were all filmed simultaneously over like under a 2-year or 18-month period in New Zealand. So my point is, it seems to me that, you know, professionals can keep more than one thought in their head. So I don't think that explains it. I mean, maybe she didn't actually curate this. I don't know. I've no idea. But my general point is, it's a disappointing palette for me. For me, it's a lot of money and it's just sort of sitting there. I sort of have to keep, well, I do have to keep it, because for comparison's sake, assuming she comes out with something that's very exciting next year, then it is, you know, it's important to be able to compare and contrast. But I really haven't reached for this. I have tried to love it. I have, especially when Pat herself will release short videos on Instagram doing something exciting with this palette, and I try and replicate it, and it's not exciting at all. It just looks like I've just taken a drugstore eyeshadow and it's a bit bland, it doesn't particularly last, and it's not exciting, and certainly doesn't justify the price. But I say this, you know, with sadness, because I want to enjoy it, and I want to enjoy a fabulous palette with 10 shades, but this basically isn't it. And it's just, for me anyway, a real shame. And I also know that when I reviewed it, and earlier on in the year, when, you know, everybody was reviewing it, when I saw and watched some of those reviews, although it occurs to me I clearly had the time then, because I'm hardly watching. I did say to a friend of mine, actually, I'm not spending enough time on social media these days, and she said no one ever, but apparently I'm just a bit busy. But anyway, at that time I had watched lots of reviews, and it seemed to me it was a little, the tone was a little bit more lukewarm than I seem to remember with other motherships. But I would like to hear from you, particularly if you're a Pat McGrath Labs fan. Are you still reaching for this palette? Do you still think this is a kind of a worthwhile addition to the entire Mothership canon, as it were? I do wonder, because, you know, as I said, I don't think well, I know I'm not really the target audience. I am, you know, I bought this, I wanted to review it, I wanted to have a really good look at it, and everything told me that I would love this palette, partly because it's got these sort of earthy tones that I really, you know, they're totally my comfort zone, and I think it's probably the comfort zone for a lot of people. And then, you know, any kind of glitzy metallic shade, whatever the formula, I'm totally here for trying. But if you are definitely a Mothership person, I would love to know whether you still reach for this palette. The second one is actually, for me personally, more disappointing. I had high hopes with this palette. I talk, of course, of the Hollywood instant look in a palette. I like a face palette, I just do. My favourite face palettes are all made by Natasha. I just love them, and I use them and use them and use them. Even the pink Is it the Love palette? Even that, which I know has been a bit derided, I even like that. I like her blushes, I like her highlighters, I can always make it work. I love it. So I was excited by this because I have had Charlotte's. I keep most things in the boxes if they've not been used. That's always a clue. I have had Charlotte's face palettes before and enjoyed them. And I was excited about this because firstly, look at this beautiful packaging. I mean, what is not to like? It's just, look at it. It's so lovely. Glitzy. It's got that thing too. It's just lovely. It's just really lovely. I even like the way they've sort of embossed the logo, although it looks a bit Cyrillic, doesn't it? At any rate, but what a disappointment this palette has been. What a disappointment. Just insipid, phoned in, not the quality that I really do. I'm somebody who just really enjoys Charlotte Tilbury's eyeshadows. I just do. I know there are better formulas out there, but I find it a very workable, blendable formula, particularly the quads, which I know, you know, we're going back in time really with those quads, but I still use loads of them, a lot. And even with the new 9 pans, I've got all of them. I just love using them. I just love, you know, her commitment to colour and all of that. But this, I mean, it's just, you can see it's hardly been used. Because I reviewed it, I was totally underwhelmed. I gave it another go because I was away on holiday at the time. I gave it another go the day after or the day after that, and it was just, okay, this just is, it just feels, the quality feels really cheap in the eyeshadows themselves. I got the darker one. I don't know what this one is called. This one is called Dreamy Bronzed Beauty. Now, there's an interesting story with this. I was in store this morning because I wanted to buy an extra little gift for a friend of mine whose birthday it is, from Charlotte Tilbury. And I thought I'll have a look at the light one of these because I bought this online and got it delivered to where I was on holiday. So I thought I'll look at the lighter one because she's very much a kind of English rose, peaches and cream complexion. And I swatched the lighter one. I literally went outside. It was pouring with rain today. It was a real labour of love for her. Went outside, had a look. They hardly showed up. So I think the problem, or the way I see it anyway, is it's across the two palettes. It's a waste of money, of course it is, but it's also really disappointing because actually, in principle, it should be great. You know, if these shades had proper punch, these two shades here, which they don't, and this, you know, this bronzer was deep enough for a medium to, I mean, I'm a medium tan. I'm not that deep at all, and it was hardly showing up on me. The blushes were okay and the highlighter, but not the best quality, not the most smooth, yeah, not the most smooth finish. So really disappointing. I mean, just really disappointing because it would just make the most cracking gift. It really would, which is kind of why I thought I'll look for the lighter one for my friend. I've ended up buying her something else entirely. But my point is, the disappointment with this is actually greater than the disappointment with the Pat McGrath because I love a face palette, I love Charlotte Tilbury, but this is phoned in. This really is phoned in. And I got the impression that these weren't sort of greeted with enormous love, but I might, you know, I might be wrong. I don't know. It's just a real shame. That's kind of how I feel about it. Not least because the packaging is gorgeous. Everything about it is gorgeous, except the contents. Really sad about that. Yeah, really sad. In contrast to the previous two palettes, these palettes that I want to talk about are ones that I just did not reach for. Not because they're bad, but because they're just not my thing. It's a situation of, it's me, not them. And most of these palettes are by Dior. And so that just tells me what I've always kind of, or I've recently known the last few years, that these new Dior formulas are just not for me. Dior used to be my favourite quince, but you know, with a few notable exceptions, not least khaki, which I'm wearing today, they're kind of not. Now, khaki is the permanent collection, the, what do they call them? Just the straightforward eyeshadow palette. It's not the Carnage, the new Carnage formula, or any of the newer formulas, but I think it's a winner. I do really like it and I do use it. This is my second one, I think. But I think this is a slightly newer formula because I have changed the formula a few times. But anyway, my point is, as a colour story, I do really like it. I feel, and I only noticed it actually today when I was preparing for this video, that, look, here's khaki, which I'm sure you've seen lots of times before. Here we go, like that. And here is Lisa's Desert Gleam. And I think khaki is the introverted sister of Desert Gleam, basically. I think that's why I like these two palettes, depending on how I feel. But this one is kind of, you know, more classily muted, whereas this one I can kind of really go to town with Lisa's one. But anyway, my point is, I'm not against Dior. It's just that the recent palettes, for me, they've been all right. I could use them, but I don't reach for them because there are colour stories that are similar or better in, for me anyway, better formulas. So not trying to diss anybody because I know they're really popular. But they have been a disappointment, not least because they're quite expensive. I've always enjoyed reviewing them because there's always that moment for me when I just think, is this going to be the one? Is this going to be a Dior palette that I find really exciting? Now, Misty Iris was an exception because I thought that was a cracking colour story. Here it is. If you've not, you know, just to remind yourself, to remind you, it's just absolutely cracking. And there are some really lovely, lovely shades here. Just very, very sort of user-friendly. They blend beautifully. They, you know, they show up really nicely. It's just that little bit too pearly, or pearlized, I should say. And it can look a little bit dated on me. That's kind of how I feel. I may be wrong, I don't know, but it's got that, it's just got a little bit too much pearl in it. And I'm not quite sure why I'm saying this to you when I love anything pearlized or shimmery or metallic, but there's something about it that may be slightly dusty with a bit too much pearl in it. I don't know, for me it doesn't seem as flattering. And yet I kind of crave the colour story because I love these shades. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, by the time, you know, early November came along and I bought the Chanel Nuit Astrale, that basically scratched the lavendery, lilac-y itch, which frankly, the inflammation had started with Betty because the Betty palette, you know, definitely got me in that kind of lavender mode. But let me show you I know it's different. Yeah, I'm not saying this is the same colour story as Misty Iris. I'm just saying there was a kind of evolution for me where I went from this one, which from a formula was kind of disappointing in the end, to this, which, this is everything. This is everything, this palette. They have got it so dead right. And I suppose in a way, this is what I mean about Dior, in that I've had good experiences with Dior. I've had plenty more experiences this year with Dior where it's kind of like, yeah, it's very nice, but I don't reach for it because, you know, there's better versions out there. But I also know that it's just around the corner for me that Dior's going to bring out a cracking palette that I'm going to completely fall in love with, because who knew that I was going to fall in love with a Chanel quad? Because honestly, that has never happened. Never. I have bought them repeatedly over decades, and never have I loved them. Never. But I just kept going, you know, because I'm resolute. I'm the plucky heroine who will, you know, climb that mountain and swim that river to get to the right quad, you know? And look what happened. It happened for me with Chanel after, as I said, decades of me saying, they don't show up, they don't blend that easily, a bit dusty, and then they come out with this. So I know, I have faith. I do. It's the right time of year for having faith. I have faith that Dior is going to bring something cracking out for me soon. What I think happened with both Misty Iris as well as this one, which one was this one? This is Silk Taupe, which I also really liked, but it's not a cracking colour story. It is a very, very much repeated colour story. So then the question is the formula going to be so amazing that I always reach for it? And the answer is no in this one again. But I think what really sort of did it for me was by the time Louis Vuitton came out with their range, and I bought two. I bought the blue, the something sky, whatever it's called, something sky, which was the blues, which I was a bit underwhelmed by because to me it didn't compare, especially also for the money as well, but certainly in terms of formula, with the Charlotte Tilbury Denim Dimensions, which I really love and have used to death. But I also bought Dazzling Gaze, which I love and adore. And actually, I've not bought any more of the quads of the Louis Vuitton because I'm not that attracted to any of the rest of them. But this has been an absolute winner. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is this is also subtle. It's not a Pat McGrath metallic, you know, see me from the moon, or, you know, wherever you are in the world, you'd be able to see my eyeshadow. It's not like that at all. It's subtle, but it's not insipid. And I suppose that's kind of my problem with most of the Dior palettes that I have bought and held on to this year. They've just been a bit insipid, a bit meh, a bit half-hearted on somebody with slightly darker skin, you know, on the eyes and so on. And also somebody who wants a little bit more punch. This is not a punchy palette, but it's when I'm wearing it, you can tell that I'm wearing it. They blend like a dream. And this shade here, this pinky one here, has got flecks of gold running through it. It's just gorgeous. It really is lovely. I think you can see it probably better if I do that. There you go. It's really lovely and eminently blendable, and if you want something very subtle you can get it, but if you want a bit more definition it does that. And I suppose that's kind of my gripe with the Dior releases this year, and I bought loads. I think I bought 7 of them in total. I don't need to show them all to you, but it's all the same story. My favourite out of all of them was Misty Iris, and even then, as I've said to you, I've had misgivings. But listen, this is the hope. This is the beacon of hope. What can I say? I want to feel with both Chanel and Dior that they can do a very classy, understated look, but they can also do a little bit more punch for someone like me who still wants to look classy and understated-ish. Not that anyone ever says that about me, but gives, you know, a bit more definition. So I think what it is, this is Hugh Grant being the romantic hero and yet also being able to bring out a performance like he did in Heretic. And if you haven't seen Heretic, what are you doing? Go and see, watch this video, finish this video first, then go and watch Heretic, because it's cracking. Also, great knitwear he sports. You know, I do like a nice jumper. Very nice. Blusher got to stand in the middle of the stage and sing its power ballads back to back in 2025. And I was here for it initially because Charlotte Tilbury launched these, and I really liked the whole blusher and finishing powder combi thing. I was totally here for it. I bought both palettes, I reviewed both palettes, I still use them. Cracking. I thought this is going to be a great year for me because I'm really into these blushers and we're going to get more of the same, but no. This was all about the glossy, sticky kind of business, and I suppose I fell for it in that I bought everything. I really tried to use it to try and get myself into it. I don't think I realised that I was falling for the hype. I think I just thought, oh, I'm trying something new in a kind of, you know, yeah, I suppose, game to try something new. And I suppose now I think that blush was like the first date that you kind of, you know, there was a lot of expectation for me, but basically it was a bit too sticky and a bit too wet to go back to. And I think that's what happened. I've still got these Charlotte Tilburys still in their box. I've got 4 of them. Yeah, I've got 4 of them. I did use them a bit. This was actually a better formula. I thought it wasn't as sticky. The Dior I liked, but what kept staying in my hand was they smell of chewing gum. I mean, why would you want a blush product to smell like chewing gum? Or those nicotine chews, beloved of so many teenagers, speaking for a friend. And it's just a horrible smell to put on your cheek. And so I liked the product, particularly this one. I forget what this one is called. I will link it up here, which has got this really lovely kind of peachy fleck goldy, you know, it's nice and it's easy to apply. It's just that I didn't kind of want to look like a 1950s doll the whole time. I had these kind of shiny cheeks that looked slightly alarming, I think. I don't know whether it's to do with it didn't suit me as a person or my style or whatever, or whether everybody looks like that, because I did, if I'm honest, I did look at everybody on Instagram and then everyone just looked a little bit sweaty. So even with this, which I think was definitely, you know, it was definitely a lovely product from Dior and I did enjoy it. I ended up buying the other one, which is Toffee. Is this Toffee? Yeah, this is Toffee. And again, good shade, you know, usable shade. But I suppose once summer was over, so were these. And I just don't think I'm going to go back to them. I think that whole blush trend for me was just not me. You know, not me at all. The Charlotte Tilburys, I have to say, were more usable because they were sheerer. So maybe I would go back to them. I don't know though. I think in the end, I am a powder blush girl. I used to wear a lot of cream blush many years ago, like 25 years ago, but they tended to be more in the pot and it was a sheerer finish and they weren't super shiny. They weren't. It's the shine, I think, that kind of, you know, puts me off. They're wet, but not in a good way. So yeah, that's it. Also, I have to say, the Natasha Denona, I only bought one, and this one that I bought, I absolutely loved the shade. Flirty Flush. Like a toilet that's trying to rebrand. So this, you know what? I love these shades. Love them. Right up my street. But again, that little bit too sticky, shiny for me to keep kind of using. But the shades are lovely. I mean, I love a blusher, this kind of shade. But again, that creamy, shiny formula, it's not for me. I'm really hoping that 2026 sees some wonderful powder blushers, because we've had lots of powder blushers, all of which I've really enjoyed, or the majority of which I've really enjoyed. I just want more because I love a blush. I do. I love a blush. I just don't want to look like I have smeared myself in petroleum jelly and then added a little bit of tint on there. I really don't. The palettes that I most of all really, really wanted to love, and it's taken quite a long time for me to kind of face the truth, as it were, is the YSL. The packaging, look at the packaging. It's so lovely. I'm just a sucker for it. I love it. I also love the colour stories, and I've got several of them. Now, the last two that I bought were Unexplored Garden and Sunrise Safari. These shades here, they really are lovely. They really are. But I don't reach for them, and I don't reach for them actually for the best of reasons, which is the fallout. There is so much fallout I can't be doing with it. I don't mind a bit of fallout on application, but they then need to stay on the old eyelids. And I don't feel that I should have to put a setting spray every single time just to keep the shadows in place. I don't always want to use a setting spray. And in fact, when these two came out, I hadn't yet discovered the real sort of one that has worked the best for me, which is the one size, the one that you've got to give it a good little shake, the powder melt. It's just really lovely. However, and before that, sorry, I should say I was using, I'm looking at it now, this is actually my second bottle now, I was using the Tear, which is also really very good. This has got the edge on it though. However, my point is, even with this, I just didn't feel I just wanted to put it on my eyelids. And frankly, at this price, there shouldn't be any fallout. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So it's real disappointment for me because I don't want to give them away, because part of me thinks, actually, what does part of me think? Actually, the truth is, I don't want to give them away because I think they're beautiful. But what's going on? Because do I really need 5 eyeshadow palettes that I'm just looking at the same packaging? I should probably just keep one and just admire one. It's ridiculous. But I know I'm being ridiculous because more shades are coming out next year, and my instinct is, oh, I'm going to give them a go. It might have got better. That's because I love the packaging. You know, it's like any relationship. You've got to listen to the whispers so you don't have to hear the screams. And I'm not listening to the whispers. You know, I'm going to keep going until I start really moaning about the waste of money and all of that. I know these are very popular, so I think it's just, for me, they just in the end don't suit me, even though I have worn some other incarnations of the quads and just kept going and just kind of kept, you know, to add, I would take my concealer and my concealer brush with me and just kind of give it a little zhuzh and brush it away a couple of hours, a couple of hours into wearing them. But that's no way to live, is it? You know, our eyeshadows should be working for us, not us for them. And at the moment with this, I kind of feel like I am a slave to this, and it's probably not a healthy relationship. That's kind of what I would say. Oh, it's exhausting, isn't it? But there are so many palettes that work so perfectly, and that's what I kind of have to cling on to, which brings me onto palettes that have surprised me beyond belief in the best way. These are palettes that surprised me in the sense that I really do reach for them. I've got a little tray here, and these are some of the notable kind of palettes that I've been using a lot. A real surprise for me were the Dolce & Gabbanas, which, you know, I'm a sucker for this packaging. I know it's a bit controversial. I really, really love it. Sorry, can you see it? They're very fingerprinty, but that's because I genuinely use them. So yes, the evidence is there. It won't take much CSI to know who's been using these. I also like the way, sort of the goldiness, they kind of look, they remind me of the Oval Office, which I think is turning into a bit like a gingerbread house. You know, in the fairy tale, you can pick off a bit of the gingerbread house and eat it. I think the Oval Office is full of eyeshadow. Yes, they're all eyeshadow palettes built into the wall, and then we can just sort of pluck off a lovely little Dolce & Gabbana palette that looks like this. This is what perfection looks like. This is one of the I say one because there's a lot out there, but they are my favorites. This is the cool, this is the warm, this is what great, neutral, easy to wear palettes look like. The formula is heavenly. It's creamy, it's not dusty, it's blendable, it's done, it's the work of moments. It really is the absolute work of moments. Absolutely cracking. And both of them have got an amazing topper shade in the middle. Just beautiful, perfection. I haven't bought the pink one yet. I keep thinking, oh, I must buy the pink one, and then I just forget. But I am going to buy it by the end of the year because all three of these colour stories are heavenly. The pink I just have to have. The formulas are amazing. I've just been blown away by these. I really have. And on an impulse, really, I bought the Dolce & Gabbana concealer, which is also fabulous. Fantastic. What a thrilling brand. Just delightful. The other thing, and I know I'm late to the party, is my very first Victoria Beckham palette that I bought is actually the Cocoa palette, and I have really used this. I love it. It's just beautiful. This bronzy, browny, goldy shade as a one and done is glorious. Absolutely glorious. I mean, I've sort of smidged it on there and put quite a bit, but if you dust it lightly over the lids and just put a little bit of this gorgeous kind of, it's not really a cream, it's more like a very soft cream with a little bit of coffee in it. Can you see that? Can you see that there? Just lovely. Just blends everything. Just glorious. Absolutely glorious. You know, I'm absolutely thrilled. Again, I mean, I suppose the three colour stories I've just shown you, they're really easy to wear, aren't they? And while I am obviously, you know, like a lot of people, drawn to these very easy to wear shades, sort of first thing in the morning and, you know, for work and all that kind of stuff, the next two are palettes that I have really worn. This Danessa Myricks Freedom palette, the pastel one. I mean, what's not to like? Glorious. You know, I bought this because I was excited. I thought I'll review it. We can have a bit of a laugh. It'll be great for the summer. I didn't stop wearing it throughout the summer, and it was basically the matte swat did it, because you know, I could always get a wonderful blend and then put as much metallic pizzazz as I wanted to, and mix and match them as well. So that's really, it was the mattes in this that gave me the confidence to buy the big palette, which is here. And while for me, this palette is not, I don't use all of the shades, I use around 70% of the shades, so that's all great. So that's what gave me the confidence, because the mattes, this matte formula that I enjoyed so much in this is in the big daddy of the Freedom palettes. But this was absolutely lovely. It's a cracking palette, particularly for spring, summer. And actually, the scary, in inverted commas, shade, in my opinion, is this matte here, which I've hardly used actually. I think I only used a little bit, but actually this is the one that I don't use as much. But all these metallics are so utterly glorious that, look at that. Look at that shiftiness, that even with one matte that you don't particularly use, although this one does blend very, very nicely, if you want, you know, quite a kind of aquatic look. It's not quite the mermaidy look, but it's definitely, you're definitely on your yacht with your big sunglasses and glamorous caftan. Who doesn't want to look like that in the summer? Basically, I've just described my look. That's basically what I wear on holiday. A caftan, big glasses, and depending on how I feel, a good lip. But my point is, look at that. Absolutely glorious. But also, just to remind you, the other metallic-y shades, they're just so lovely. Just perfection. And such a tiny, portable palette. But this was a real surprise to me, quite how much I used this palette, and how much I love it. And I will definitely, and this doesn't always happen to me with eyeshadows, I will definitely be wearing it again next sort of late spring, summer, because this, I don't have anything in my collection that does what this does in such a tiny little package, and such a portable package as well. Not package, you know, compact, whatever. Fabulous. Comes in this little pochette. And finally, my very first Byredo palette was an absolute, and has been an absolute hit. And again, I'm probably slightly surprised, not least because of all the reds that I kind of thought, oh, they'll be too bright for me, but they weren't. They're very usable. The whole palette is usable. The formula's delightful. So there have been plenty of absolutely delightful palettes. This is just a small selection of, you know, the ones that kind of sprung to mind in the context of me sort of, not so much jumping on a trend, but in a way believing the hype. Although the notable exception I feel are the Dolce & Gabbana, which I think were quite a quiet release, but I was intrigued because at least 2 out of the 3 colour stories, and I'm excluding the pinks for a reason I'll tell you about, but 2 out of the 3 colour stories were of great interest to me, because I'm always on the lookout for a cracking cool palette and a cracking warm palette. I can't have enough, I can't have too many, and I want to experiment with as many as possible. The reason why I initially was not attracted to the pink one of the Dolce & Gabbana was because the Louis Vuitton quad that I had, Dazzling Gaze, was so thrilling and so easy to use that I didn't feel, it wasn't that I didn't feel I wanted another pink palette, because I love pink palettes, but I wasn't kind of in the mood at that point for one, just because I was, you know, so satisfied with that, you know, what it was giving me. But I'm just saying that there have been some notable cracking palettes. This is by no means my, you know, top anything, insert number of choice. It's just to illustrate in this video that there were plenty of things that were very popular, hyped, lots of advertising on social media to get us excited, that absolutely ticked the boxes, rang my bell, made me very happy, and I enjoy reliving the experience from time to time. So I want to hear from you. What is it from 2025 that you feel you bought that either disappointed you, or maybe you felt, I don't know whether anybody feels like me, that I kind of felt, especially with the blushers, that I was trying to, you know, I was the square peg in the round hole. You know, I was just not the market really for them. And I don't think it's an age thing or even a skin thing, because actually with dry skin, you know, that's partly why in the past I've worn cream blushes, because actually those formulas were more forgiving on a dry skin, because those were the days when the powder blushes were actually quite dusty and quite powdery. However, it's not like that anymore. So, you know, we kind of don't have to do it. But which are the products that you found maybe the most disappointing? I don't want to be negative in this video, because, you know, no brand can get everything right for everybody. And no brand, I think, can get everything right full stop. You know, people make mistakes, brands make mistakes. So yeah, it's not so much that. It's more, you know, was there something that you feel didn't live up to the hype, and you're kind of looking at it now, it might be taking up real estate in your drawers, and you think, oh, that was a bit of a waste, or that didn't work for me. Or maybe there was a particular palette that was hyped that you brought home and you just thought, what's the fuss about? I don't get the fuss, you know? I feel a bit like that, if I'm honest, with the Dior Quince, because people do go bananas for them. They're obviously very, very popular. I kind of feel I don't get it. I don't get it. I was like that with the Chanel Vuitton. When I went to swatch them, to me, they were just not even remotely pigmented enough for even a subtle look. And I was very disappointed in that, because actually lots of people loved them. So, you know, we're all different, aren't we? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Do give me a thumbs up and please subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.